morning, Mr. Sir. Chen Sing from Hwa Chong. And since we are on the topic of ASEAN, I'd like to ask a question on ASEAN as well. You see, there have been many criticisms about ASEAN, especially about the policy of non-interference. And Singapore, as in the form of a big brother in this region, as evidently seen by the fact that many people from all over Southeast Asia come to Singapore in search of education, medication, health services. Do you think Singapore can actually play an active role? I'm not saying that we should intervene in other countries' domestic affairs, but do you think Singapore can get involved in helping other countries and as well as ASEAN move forward together, progress economically as well as politically? Or do you think this policy of non-interference should stay as a form of respect to the countries involved?
First, let me say at the outset that we are not a big brother to anyone, and we can never be a big brother to anyone. We are too small, and even though we may have some influence in certain areas, we must never let it get into our heads. There must always be a certain sense of proportion, a certain modesty of our own capabilities, and an appreciation of interdependence, that we can only be what we are because we have links to others. As Foreign Minister, I've got to make that clear. You have raised a very important question about the principle of non-interference. It is a principle of international relations which arose in Europe many years ago when nation states appeared. And because each nation state is sovereign and autonomous, other nation states should not be interfering in their domestic affairs. But when you have a community like in ASEAN, we are like members of a family. And even though we cannot tell other family members what to do, we can in good ways, in positive and negative ways, put moral pressure on them. You know, if you read the English Constitution by Paget, it's a thin book. The English have no constitution. What they have is tradition and a common law. And the role of the monarchy in England is non-executive. It's really got no powers. But it always has a power to criticize, to admonish, to encourage. Here in ASEAN, we cannot say we don't like what's happening in Myanmar, so we'll send our troops in and change the government. We can't do that. But we can, by our behavior, tell you what we think and whether we approve of what you do. You may, in the end, still ignore us, but we will react to your reaction. And indeed, this is what has happened. So over the years, every time, talking about Myanmar specifically now, because it's a kind of hot topic in recent days, we've had to criticize them when we meet. So when they killed monks in cold blood last September, the foreign ministers were in New York at the time, and we had to convene an emergency meeting expressing our revulsion at what had happened, condemning what had happened, and demanding that they conduct themselves better. We are not threatening them with soldiers or with sanctions, but we are telling them and the world that we are family members and we don't like what you have done. Then when Cyclone Najis hit them, and it was a disaster of biblical proportions, and so many died, and so many are still suffering because of what has happened. There was a standoff between Myanmar and the rest of the world. we could have taken a cynical position and said, well, you don't want us to be involved, so we'll stay away. Good luck to you. Or we tried to be a bridge between Myanmar and the world, which was what we did, with limited success. But because ASEAN interposed itself between Myanmar and the world, so there is a tripartite working group now in Yangon, which now facilitates the movement of international assistance to the Delta area. So yes, the principle is one of non-interference, but that's only in the hard sense. The reality is, in a globalized world where nations are interdependent, where people travel, where we watch the same TV channels and read the same newspapers, international newspapers, we are always pressuring each other to do better. And that's the reality today. So it is not a principle which is expressed in white and black. Yes, there is a white and there is a black, but there is a continuum of grey in between, and we often operate in that grey area. Thank you.
I regret to have to say now that we have exhausted our time for this dialogue session. I'm certain that having broached concisely on issues such as our everyday interactions with those around us, Singapore's role within ASEAN and expanding out to ASEAN's role in itself as a cohesive mechanism, we all come away with a clearer macro perspective and have had our uncertainties clarified and our doubts addressed. For this, join me in thanking Minister Yeo once again.
Thank you, Akilan. We have now come to the end of the Hwa Chong Lecture 2008. Thank you once again, Minister, for that very enlightening and engaging session. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Peter Yeo, Chairman of the Hwa Chong Board of Governors, to present a memento to Minister Yeo in appreciation of his having taken time off from his busy schedule to be with us today. Mr. Yeo, please.